Postmen/couriers of Reddit. What's the weirdest state someone's been in while answering the door? I once delivered pizza to a rager. Not a stack of pizzas to a normal party, a single pizza to a huge riot of a party. Like cars parked on the lawn, guys throwing up off the balcony, people fighting in the living room, hundreds of beer cans all over the places. All of it. I go in and ask for Amy, the person who ordered it, and everyone is pointing me to different directions. Eventually, I find this girl doing 3 feet bong rips on the back porch. She looks at me and says, "Oh shoot, my pizza," then hands me a crumpled up $100 bill and tells me to keep the change. As I'm getting in my car, a guy runs up to me to ask to do a beer run. I say I have to get back and he says, "Okay, what if I pay you?" Then he gives me like $20 for running him down the street to the gas station. Story 2. I am not a postal worker, but I did used to be a public defender. I once had a client who got into the habit of always greeting his postal worker and the UPS and FedEx delivery drivers completely naked and at full attention. That is also why he was my client. I had to plea him out. Story 3. Oh boy, I'm probably too late for this, but let me tell you an insane story. I moved into a shared house with 2 other people when I was 21, living the dream, lots of parties, and pretty soon after moving in, I started hooking up with one housemate. Very laid back and a little weird. She literally used to tell me how her Tinder dates went after we finished. I promise this isn't some horny story though, it's just an important bit of context. One day I'd made up some cash doing a gig, close-up magic, and called her asking if she fancied a few celebratory drinks and a movie evening. It was pretty early because it was a lunchtime gig for the Jubilee in England. She was all for it, so that's what we did. Of course, we didn't get fully dressed afterwards, so I'm naked and she puts on a t-shirt and a pair of my boxers, and we are an hour into Memento and 20 minutes post-shag when the door goes. It's a friggin' policeman there when she answered the door. "Is Steve in?" the other housemate, they asked. "No," she says. Steve was out for a couple days, hence me being naked on a sofa. I start looking for clothes, but there are none in the lounge, and I'd have to walk past the front door to get to the bedroom. Police hear me rustling, assume I'm Steve, and bust into the flat. I get arrested on the spot and handcuffed naked. Housemate gets my license to prove it's not me, and I'm let go. So they leave, and it was so surreal we both just start laughing. The police were so embarrassed by the end of it, so we were all kind of laughing together after the apologies. We all saw the ludicrousness of the situation. So of course when the door knocked again a few minutes later, I assumed it was the police and they'd forgotten something. So I answered, butt naked as the day I was born, and said, "Are you here to pin me down again?" to the Amazon delivery guy. Story 4. I worked for a laundry delivery service and had a pretty regular route, so I saw a lot of the same customers pretty often. One guy would regularly answer the door in his old, saggy underwear. I never reacted until I asked some old coworkers if they'd ever experienced that with him. Our service sent text messages to the client with the driver's name, so you could pretty much guess if they were going to be male or female. 100% of the men said no, 100% of the women said yes. Next time I delivered to him, I looked at his crotch, then back to his face and did a hard eye roll while tisking just audibly. Never did it to me again. Story 5. In a previous life, I delivered pizzas part-time, and once delivered to an apartment. I rang, got buzzed in, arrived at the door, and knocked. I heard doors open and some rather rhythmic squeaking, so I nervously opened the door, step into the hallway, turn the corner, and there on the sofa some guy is giving it hard to, I assume, his girlfriend. He doesn't even look up or break rhythm. She just looks over his shoulder and says, "Money's on the table, thanks." I take the money, and as I'm leaving, I hear, "Pizza's here, hurry up, I'm starving." I managed to hold it together until I got in the elevator, then nearly peed myself laughing once the doors closed. Story 6. Delivered mail for many years and met all kinds of people at the door in varied life situations, but there is one I will never forget. I had a certified letter for an address, which requires a signature from the recipient, so I knock on the door, immediately accosted with deep, loud barking, so I took a couple of steps back from the door. A few seconds later, a little kid opens the door, and a massive Rottweiler is suddenly scream barking at me from inches away. I'm very calmly standing my ground and softly telling the dog what a good guard dog he is. I could tell stories about all the dogs I made friends with over the years. When I hear a woman's voice asking what I need, I look up to see literally the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, before or since, wearing nothing but a small bra and underwear. I'm proud to say that I was able to pick my jaw up off the ground after a few moments and explain why I was there, while the rot continued to verbally accost me a few inches from my crotch. She then turned around, I swear it was in slow motion, but maybe that was just me, and yelled for her boyfriend. Suddenly, everything was at normal speed, to come get his dumb dog. I managed to maintain eye contact while she signed the pink slip. She gave me a smile I'll never forget and closed the door while I stood there reevaluating my life choices. It's been about 20 years since that happened, and I can still see her in my mind's eye. You probably don't want to know my other story about the 80-year-old man. Story 7. Not a postman, but I have a similar story. I'm a firefighter, and one night we got dispatched for an alarm activation called in by an outside alarm company. It was a late night call, probably 1 or 2 a.m. Upon arrival, nobody was outside of the listed address, but I noticed a few of the lights were on in the windows, so after double checking the address, we knocked on the door. The door was opened by a guy wearing nothing but boxers and a female wearing a towel behind him. We spoke to the two residents, and they said they didn't have any alarms to go off, but offered to let us in to check out their system. So me, being the young fireman I am, went inside following the mail. That is when I noticed a tail coming out of his boxers and very quickly realized he wasn't waddling because of an injury. Story 8. About 11 years ago, I went to pick a girl up for a date. This date had been a suggestion by a mutual friend of ours. Walking up to the door, I noticed the main door was open with only the glass storm door closed. I rang the doorbell, having full view all the way to the back of the house into the living room. Her brother, who was maybe 7 at the time, comes running down the hallway naked as the day he was born. Then immediately after comes Dad, also naked. Then I hear a female voice from upstairs and a head pokes out over a balcony. It was the girl's mom. Now, I can't fully confirm this, but her shoulders and what I could see of her chest was also naked. Then my date comes down the stairs dressed. This was my first and so far only interaction with a nudist family. Warning would have been nice. Story 9. My husband was a mailman for years before we met and has some stories. My personal favorite is the guy who'd meet him at the top of the stairs in a bathrobe. Husband then could see his family jewels. He'd then offer my husband a bottle of water and ask him if he wanted to come in for a massage. Unsurprisingly, he declined the dude's offer every time. Story 10. Wife does physical therapy and once had a job doing it in home health. Probably about once a month, she'd have yet another elderly male patient that would open the door not wearing pants. Sometimes with half-rotted tighty-whities on and sometimes not. She'd just kindly remind them that we'd have to be wearing pants for the next visit. Story 11. Back in high school when I delivered pizzas my senior year, I received 2 separate offers to come inside an apartment/trailer for extracurricular activities. Strangely, both times it was a pair of older women asking, different delivery addresses and people. Both times I thanked them for their offer and walked out to continue my deliveries. Could have ended up with some great stories or woke up next to a dumpster without a kidney. This was the late 90s. Story 12. I delivered pizzas for a while in my younger days. I've seen some odd things, but one instance has always stuck with me. I was in one of the mid-tier trailer parks in town. About 2 a.m., I knock on the door and soon enough it was open to reveal 10 dudes crammed into this tiny trailer, all in nothing but their underwear, in the midst of a heated Nerf gun war. They paused. One guy blasted me with his Nerf gun, and all the rest went, "Nah, cool, man," and unloaded on the guy. They ended up leaving me with a hefty tip and a nug. Overall, not bad, but definitely surreal. Story 13. Not a postman. Went to a new customer's house, had spoken on the phone with him a few minutes prior, so he knew I was almost there. African-American man in his 70s opens the door wearing nothing but some boxers and just stares at me, not saying a thing while sucking a lollipop. Not in like a gay way, just staring at me like, "What do you want?" All I wanted was to leave. Story 14. Used to deliver food, and guys constantly came to the door naked and would do the whole hide their bottom half with the door while snaking their naked top half around the door to do business with you. Even more surprising was that on Friday/Saturday night, I'd always get at least 1 or 2 deliveries for women that they were also obviously ready to go out to a bar or club. They would come to the door in bra, underwear, and sometimes stockings and be totally relaxed and not nervous. I mean, cool, but at a certain point it kind of makes you feel like they don't really look at delivery guys as actual people. Story 15. I'm not a postal worker as well, but I used to be a door knocker. You know, that annoying guy trying to get you to donate when you're having a really bad day. Anyway, I was doing my normal thing when I go up to one house. Pretty average house, not big, not small, nice neighborhood, and nice car out the front. Usually the nice neighborhoods are a bit more respectful when we come around, and they don't say, "Get out of here," really rudely. Mainly because they have a lot less to worry about on a daily basis, probably. Anyway, I get to the door and knock, and I see someone on the couch. He yells, "What's up?" I say the whole pitch, but whilst doing so, I can see some faint movement in this guy's silhouette. Then he lets out a huge grunt, gets up, comes to the door, opens it, and he is butt naked with a tissue stuck to his leg. Then proceeded to say, "Sorry, just had to finish up. What are you selling?" Still dangling there. Story 16. Not a postman or courier, but as a kid, I had to go door to door a lot with the Boy Scouts as part of their scouting for a food drive that would take place every November. We all had interesting stories. Some really echo what's been said here. People answering in towels, couples stopping in the middle of action to answer the door. Had some people use religious exemption as an excuse to not donate anything. We weren't pushy pushy at all, just asking if you had a can or two to donate. Some people would say, sorry, we're blank, and close the door. Ironically, we had someone tell us he couldn't donate because he was Mormon. This was also almost 2 decades ago, so before the Mormon church split from the BSA. It was just odd. The one that stands out that terrified me as a kid was some guy answered the door covered in animal blood with a full chicken in his hand he had been cleaning and didn't set down. As an 11-year-old, it was frightening. Story 17. Not a postman/courier, but the one answering the door. In college, I slept over at my boyfriend at the time's apartment. He went to class in the morning and I stayed and slept in. His roommate wasn't supposed to be back until 1. I showered at like 11 and walked out naked to go back to the bedroom and get clothes. Heard a knock on the door and thought it was his roommate back early, and I yelled, "Don't come in unless you want to see my boobs." Yeah, it wasn't the roommate. It was maintenance. An old man voice replied very awkwardly, "No thank you, I'll come back another time." Story 18. Not a postman, but when I was a teenager, I went to a small concert on a local bar with a big open area. I'm there with my childhood friend, his cousin, and a couple of other people. We were all drunk out of our minds, cousin more than anyone. Finally, we shove him a water bottle and firmly tell him to slow down and get a hold of himself. He responded to that by running away like his butt was on fire and getting to the maze of little streets behind the bar. We're stunned for a second, then we go chase him. He jumps over a tall fence. We can see him from some distance. The yard he jumped for is all fenced and full of tall grass and car parts. We get there in time to see his legs going down some kind of hole or well. We call for him as loud as we can. He can't get out. He says he's in real pain. He's crying. It's around 1 a.m. and we ring the bell near the fence. Second try, there comes the biggest man I've ever seen in my sorry excuse for a life. Pale as one can be, eyes so red it was noticeable in the little light we had, and he comes not just carrying his gun, he is already pointing it at our direction. The people with us bail. My childhood friend starts crying. I've known him for 8 years. No friend gets left behind. I take the chance the guy will be less inclined to blow up with a 14-year-old girl who's a third of his size, so I approach him. Bad idea. He smells putrid and like acid at the same time. I noticed he had crapped his pants and let it dry probably multiple times, and his shirt is not really gray, it's just filthy. I'll die. He is a drug addict or crazy, and I think he'll shoot me. I say we were there to get our friend and offer him $30 and some change for his trouble. It frickin' works. We haul cousin out. Turns out he really broke something, his clavicle. All the time, the man is pointing his gun at us. I can't believe he really just let us walk out. By the time we get back to the bar, all 3 of us are ugly crying. None of us told on that gun guy. Story 19. So back when I, 35F, was a kid/teen, late 90s, early 2000s, Jehovah's Witness loved our area. So much so that once the adults got tired of saying no thanks a million times over, they started letting the kids get creative. My older brother M and his Italian best friend L, both 2-ish years older than me, so probably around 16, 17, decided a bit from an adult film would be genius. So we get everything ready and wait. They finally get there and L rips the door open and starts yelling at these 2 poor souls to hurry up! How unprofessional, showing up to his set late. Just absolute Godfather meets Deuce Bigelow swinging around a cheap plastic handle of vodka and an unlit cigarette. Meanwhile, there's a camcorder on a tripod in the middle of the living room. My brother came out of the back in boxers screaming at me about something, and then I came out wrapped in a bedsheet looking naked, closed underneath. At the time I came all the way out, I realized they had already bolted at some point. Good news, they never came by again. Bad news, my parents supposedly got a visit from the police shortly thereafter while we were at school, and thankfully our neighbor behind us was a sheriff and vouched for us. Story 20. True story. My first job was working at a pizza chain called Pizza Inn in 97. I started as a dishwasher and gave phone orders. After a year or so, when I got my first car, I gave delivery a shot. I'm probably only about 10 deliveries in and I get a call for a delivery to an apartment complex. I go up a flight of stairs and there's very loud music coming from the apartment. I hear screaming and whooping and so on. I knock on the door, nothing. Knock on the door again, music stops. Door opens and there's a guy in a pink leotard and tutu and a naked chick with a video camera. They say come in and let them get money, and I step inside. I learned later this was a mistake because you can get robbed. There was practically no furniture save for a table, some folding chairs, 2 more naked people, a girl covered in paint and a guy with devil horns doing coke on said table, and a mattress in the middle of the room. On the mattress, a rather large, naked, hairy fellow in clown makeup complete with red nose and rainbow wig. And he is doing my buddy's older sister from behind. Then Mr. Pink Tutu asks me, "You want to make a movie? Do some blow and hook up with some chicks?" I did a few lines, then got the frick out of there, and they tipped me $50. Story 21. Not a postman, but service industry to customers' houses. Vehicle repairs. Pulled up to a guy's house, car's in the driveway. Call him, no answer. Go up to the door in the carport and knock, no answer. Not abnormal for my job, especially first thing in the morning. Call again and he answers and says he works nights and not to call him again and that someone should help in a bit, just sit tight. Walk up to the carport door and knock again. Middle-aged woman answers the door, wearing nothing but the clear shower curtain liner from a bathtub, rings and hooks and all wrapped around her. Must have been brand new because it was perfectly clear and not obscuring anything at all. She stands in the doorway hanging the keys from her finger like your typical genre-specific movie that I'm sure you've all jumped to in your head by now, but just wait. She says her man works nights and is always tired during the day when she's awake. I mean, I was in shock. Couldn't tell if it was real or not. A joke? They're doing it on purpose. Whatever. Replied sheepishly, well, that sucks, and grabbed the keys. Give her the time frame for the work. About 30 minutes later, while working on the car in the carport with my head under the dash, I hear the door open behind me and the shuffle of plastic. What in the world? She still hasn't put clothes on, so I didn't catch her in a situation. It has to be purposeful. Walks up behind me and asks if I'm thirsty and hands me a soda water. Still wrapped in a clear shower curtain with the hooks and all. Well, barely wrapped at this point. Thank her, spin around, and shove my head so far under the dash I could have turned the steering wheel with my teeth. Doors close, wrap up. Sit in my car for a bit debating on what to do.